with that in mind, obviously we're seeing a huge dynamic change coming or occurring in the marketplace, I think on sort of twofold. One is certainly I see in my remit of the survival, like the kind of saturation levels coming to the market now. It's kind of come back into the mainstream again. You know, the survival kind of community follows this sort of pretty routine 15, 20 year cyclical nature of it kind of becomes popular and then weird things happen and it drops off. But the biggest change, of course, is the kind of whole online side of things as well. Whereas now, instead of just kind of having the internet as archives and catalogues, it's becoming far more a dynamic kind of school or tuition place with the advent of YouTube and things like that. Everybody kind of uploading their instructionals. So what are your thoughts on what, if any, place does online learning have? Because it's not going to go away anytime soon. And of course, we've all got our individual views. So I'm just going to throw it open. What do we reckon?
You go first.
Yeah, let me take this one to begin with.
I want to drive the stake through the heart at the end.
Whenever my grandpa would get cut off in traffic, he would shake his fist and then he would mumble, "Where'd that guy learn how to drive? Correspondence school?" When we are talking about the physical skills of self-defense, I think we do ourselves a disservice if we're trying to learn by watching a video, by reading a book, by reading an article or a website. We're doing ourselves a disservice if we think we can learn the physical skill that way. It makes as much sense to say, okay, you can learn how to shoot a gun by watching a video, as it does to say, well, you know, I can learn how to water ski by watching a video. Or for you, you know, teaching the physical elements of self-defense. Now, that said, I think all three of us can agree that when it comes to survival skills, self-protection, self-defense, there's a huge component that is not physical. Mm-hmm. There's a huge component that is emotional, social, psychological, legal, definitely legal. Lots of elements that are not physical. Those elements can and should be taught in other ways. Finally, having said that, I will add that the personal involvement of an instructor is, I think, maybe critical to the development of the right attitude toward self-defense, self-protection. Without that personal touchstone, I think a lot of the right attitudes, the good attitudes toward it that are going to tend to help you toward survival, a lot of those attitudes are caught rather than taught.
Right.
And that requires the personal touch.
And my take on it, everything you said is absolutely true. We have more potential to put out information in more ways than ever before. It's not like you can pick up a book and look at some crappy black and white pictures of some technique. You can actually watch someone who's good at it, film it. So there's good information out there, more information than ever before. There's also more crap than ever before. But the part that actually bothers me most about video learning and distance learning is the percentage of population that are living so much in their heads that they read books about nature instead of going out in nature. They watch things on TV and think that they understand it. They've seen it, so they think that they can do it. And in a way, a lot of the things that are happening online are not learning. They're excuses not to learn while feeling like you are. And I put it sometimes right up there with, visualize world peace works about as well for world peace as visualizing safe driving does for safe driving. You can't shut your eyes and I'm going to think about driving safe. You're going to get in wrecks. So it's that whole, and I know I'm going to, kids these days.
But he says, rocking his chair back and forth with his coffee mug in his hand.
Well, I don't have the shotgun and I'm wearing pants, so I'm not all the way there. But it's made this perfect storm of people to think that they have full lives who have nothing on the physical scale and believe that they're contributing because they're emoting, not because they're accomplishing anything. And it basically has taken a huge percentage of our population and on their own, by themselves, they put themselves in a box where they aren't interfering with anybody and are pretty much just a drag on civilization. So, online learning is one of the easiest ways to segregate out the people that will always be useless.
I think pragmatically for me, I see huge pros and cons in it. Online learning, I'm a big fan of for the imparting of knowledge and principles. the biggest advantage I see actually with the kind of video-based and online learning is the ability for the student to watch it again and again and again.
Oh yes,
When you're
that's
sat at a
huge.
seminar, especially when you're doing the big talks for the theory part, they're getting it like one time. And a lot of the time for me, if I use myself as a sort of model, you know, I'm taking my notes, and by the sheer virtue I'm writing things down, I'm missing things that are going on. So that ability to kind of have a talk that's possibly very nuanced or detailed, and just be able to replay it, certain sections, you know, rewind, fast forward, that's kind of huge. But I also clearly believe online learning is not a substitute for practical attendance on physical courses. It can take you to a point. It can give you a good backstop to go back from a course and kind of keep you motivated, incentivized, or for you to kind of relearn or learn to a deeper level if it's done in a good manner. But there's always going to be that time that you kind of, you know, need to step on the mat or get out in the woods or whatever the case may be. That would be the advantages. I think the disadvantage is very much like you're sort of saying, it's very easy to fool yourself into believing you're at a level of competence you're not, especially with the absence of a mentor or instructor to coach, correct, verify, or state where your skill level's actually at. And I use the example, and I will name no names, but one student came on a course of mine. At the beginning I said, what, if any, experience do you have? And his very confident reply was he'd watched every episode of a certain Survivor TV personality and therefore knew his stuff. As opposed to the guy sat next to him who had attended 11 separate physical courses with 4 different instructors. Now, I'm not saying that guy didn't have any knowledge. You know, he had some good observations and some good ideas, but he'd never actually been in a situation to apply anything. And more importantly, had never practiced. He firmly believed because he'd seen a demonstration, he would be able to perform the same thing. And I think this is the danger on the online side. Sorry, we as instructors can demo, but all we can hope for is mimicry in our students using that format. And you see this. I mean, there's some fantastic videos out there, especially of kids with musical instruments that are like self-taught, that have just copied the piece they've seen on a YouTube video, whatever the case may be. But that doesn't mean they're musicians. It just means they're very skilled at mimicking the action that they've seen, potentially.
Can I give you an illustration of
I'd love
that?
you to.
This is completely outside of any of our particular spheres. But as a small child, I asked my dad if I could sit on his lap and steer the car. And this is, you know, I'm ancient, remember. This is back in the day when it was okay for kids to do things like that. So I'm sitting on Daddy's lap. I'm about 6 years old. And as soon as I got onto his lap, he said, okay, we're just going to go down the straight. We're going all of maybe 10 miles an hour, maybe 15 miles an hour. And I take the steering wheel and I'm doing this with it to make the car go straight. And my dad says to me, that's not how you make it go straight. But every time I had ever been in a car, I had seen that the driver does this and the car goes straight. I had no concept of what it was that the driver was actually doing when you see them moving the wheel. I did not know that they were constantly making tiny little corrections to keep the car going straight. So I just mimicked this action, and of course the car is swerving all over the road as a result of this. Mm-hmm. I think, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, that's what you're talking about when you talk about mimicking the actions,
Yes.
but completely missing the point.
Yes, and I think that's very easy to do, because exactly like you were saying, without that lack of of interaction with an instructor, it's how do you, and as an instructor, we all know we've got flaws in our demos, and most of the time we'll caveat it, you know, because of injury, because of this, because of whatever. Guys, I'm doing it this way, but you do what feels good for you. Mm-hmm. And so in the absence of that, it becomes that, you know, the mimicry becomes kind of quite an issue in my mind.